Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been asked to speak about the very meaning and very purpose of this conference. I wish there was a much larger audience, actually. It becomes a lot easier to talk to a large crowd, but then this shows there's a bunch of interested people. That makes it more interesting. Sustainable tourism. So we're going to have to look at this from many aspects, and I think I thought about how should I present this whole idea of sustainable tourism, because sustainable tourism is not just about the tourism and the industry we're in, it's also about various other aspects. So I thought I'd pick up the most interesting and perhaps the most talked about aspect of sustainability. Thought I'd start with something that you probably think about every day but never really see where it's taking us. Every bit of plastic ever made still exists today somewhere in the world. Just think about this. I thought, because we're talking tourism, let me bring in some simple mathematics that will perhaps make it interesting for you. Many of you are in the large business of taking people across the world. An incentive movement or a meeting or a congress that's got 100 people going from point A to point B on a 4-day program. I thought I'd put some simple mathematics into this for you to look at it. 100 people over a 4-day trip consuming 10 1-liter bottles of mineral water. Now, I know there's these bottles on all the tables right now, and I'm talking about something that I feel very passionate about, and I struggle not to use plastic bottles wherever I go. So much so that in our business, we give away to every client who arrives an aluminum bottle, and we tell them, try and fill this up with water as you go along, because you will be contributing to saving the earth. But then again, you can't change everything overnight. But think about it, 1,000 bottles, 1,000 bottles of water. I need you to see the mathematics in this because it's pretty simple. 1,000 bottles of water. When you crush those bottles after they've been consumed, they form a 3 by 3 by 3 inch cube, which comes to 27 cubic inches. Now, 1,000 bottles, therefore, translates into 15.6 cubic feet in a landfill. Do you know what 15.6 cubic feet actually represents? Have you any idea what that is? Ladies and gentlemen, that you see here, that is only 3 cubic feet. So we're talking about 5 times the size of that box is going to be sitting in a landfill somewhere on this earth for the next 500, maybe next 1,000 years, not biodegrading. I thought it would be interesting if I could show you a very interesting TED Talk I heard. Just pay attention for a few minutes.
This is the story of 3 plastic bottles, empty and discarded. Their journeys are about to diverge, with outcomes that impact nothing less than the fate of the planet. But they weren't always this way. To understand where these bottles end up, we must first explore their origins. The heroes of our story were conceived in this oil refinery. The plastic in their bodies was formed by chemically bonding oil and gas molecules together to make monomers. In turn, these monomers were bonded into long polymer chains to make plastic, in the form of millions of pellets. Those were melted at manufacturing plants and reformed in molds to create the resilient material that makes up the triplets' bodies. Machines filled the bottles with sweet, bubbly liquid, and they were then wrapped, shipped, bought, opened, consumed, and unceremoniously discarded. And now here they lie, poised at the edge of the unknown. Bottle 1, like hundreds of millions of tons of his plastic brethren, ends up in a landfill. This huge dump expands each day, as more trash comes in and continues to take up space. As plastics sit there being compressed amongst layers of other junk, rainwater flows through the waste and absorbs the water-soluble compounds it contains, and some of those are highly toxic. Together, they create a harmful stew called leachate, which can move into groundwater, soil, and streams, poisoning ecosystems and harming wildlife. It can take bottle 1 an agonizing 1,000 years to decompose. Bottle 2's journey is stranger, but unfortunately no happier. He floats on a trickle that reaches a stream that flows into a river, and a river that reaches the ocean. After months lost at sea, he's slowly drawn into a massive vortex where trash accumulates, a place known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Here, the ocean's currents have trapped millions of pieces of plastic debris. This is one of 5 plastic-filled gyres in the world's seas, places where the pollutants turn the water into a cloudy plastic soup. Some animals, like seabirds, get entangled in the mess. They and others mistake the brightly colored plastic bits for food. Plastic makes them feel full when they're not, so they starve to death and pass the toxins from the plastic up the food chain. For example, it's eaten by lanternfish. The lanternfish are eaten by squid. The squid are eaten by tuna, and the tuna are eaten by us. And most plastics don't biodegrade, which means they're destined to break down into smaller and smaller pieces called microplastics, which might rotate in the sea eternally. But Bottle 3 is spared the cruel purgatories of his brothers. A truck brings him to a plant where he and his companions are squeezed flat and compressed into a block. Okay, this sounds pretty bad too, but hang in there. It gets better. The blocks are shredded into tiny pieces, which are washed and melted so they become the raw materials that can be used again. As if by magic, Bottle 3 is now ready to be reborn as something completely new. For this bit of plastic with such humble origins, suddenly, the sky is the limit.
But that's just the plastic problem. There's far more to this than just plastic. So we're looking at tourism now. Tourism, what is the growth paradox of tourism? Is tourism sustainable? Can it ever be sustainable? Because the whole objective of our business is to grow our numbers, to grow the number of people that we take abroad or we bring into the country. I would like to look at the sustainability question by seeing the question of what is sustainability all about. So it's increasing numbers, good quality local jobs for the people, because tourism is the one single employment that employs as much as 1 out of 10 people in the world. It's also about protecting and keeping the authenticity of the destination. Not just making it a place where you take people in large numbers with no objective or purpose. And it's also looking after the communities. In this interest, I want to take you to a land which I think has made a major impact on the way I look at how sustainability is actually taking shape. Have you heard of this land? Can you recognize where this is? This is a monastery which is located in a wonderful little city, a wonderful little place in the Himalayas called Paro. It's in Bhutan. And Bhutan, and this monastery, by the way, is where a monk flew on the wings of a tiger to land there in the 8th century to establish Mahayana Buddhism in this land. This is the Takatsang Monastery, or Tiger's Nest, a wonderful little land in the northeastern part of India, sitting on the cradle of the Himalayas. Now, this land, in 1974, from its secluded format, decided to open up its land to tourism. Wanted to bring in the tourists, but of course, they were very concerned. They were very worried that the tourists would not damage the ecology, damage the cultural ethics and the cultural being of the land. So what they did was they established a charge of $65 per night per person as a fee that they would charge for the for every tourist who came into the country, so that they could restrict the numbers. So what happened when they did that? They used that money for education, for health for the people. They looked at it as an important tool to help people. But later on, they realized that tourism is a big growing factor. India is producing a lot of tourists. Neighboring countries are producing a lot of tourists. So in order to get a bit of that pie, they opened up their economy to tourists from India, and Indians did not have to pay that $65, so they started moving in large numbers. Do you know how many people actually live in this country? Can you guess? 700,000 people. You've got 7 lakh or 700,000 people who live in this land, in the whole country. And then you had 250,000 tourists coming into the country. Besides, of course, a handful of foreign tourists, you had 250,000 people who came in from neighboring countries who did not have to pay that royalty. What happened from 1974 to 2019? In 2019, we saw this land which was completely ravaged by the large numbers of people who came in. This has damaged the very fragile nature of this land. So what did they do? As of this year, as of this month, they have introduced a new tax for Indians. So Indians and neighboring country people who come in also have to pay a sustainability charge of, I think it's 1,200 rupees per person per night, in order to restrict. So this is not, in my opinion, this is a country concerned about its ecology, concerned about the fragile stature of its land, which wants to protect the ethos of the land. So is tourism sustainable? Of course it's sustainable. It's sustainable if you will think of how you can use measures that would help protect the fragile nature and the cultural values of that land. So besides Bhutan, there are other countries that are also beginning to do this. Barcelona is doing it. The Costa Rica model is something that is important now that they're looking at it. So a lot of people are looking at different ways in which they can protect that fragile nature of their land, because sustainability is not just about the plastic bottle. It's about your entire existence on this earth. Sustainability for the mice industry is something which I would like to address also, because that's critically what we're here all about. We're talking about mice. We're talking about meetings, incentives, conferences, events. We're talking about large format events like this itself. And across the world, there are so many happening. How is sustainability possible in a large format event? It's just a click away. It's just a click away, because what we can do with, here we go. So we've got what are the things that cause this fragile nature to be disturbed? We've got bottles, we've got mineral water bottles, we've got straws in glasses. We can see how we can deal with straws and mineral water bottles. Have you thought of how you can have buffets replaced by a la carte menus or by fixed menus? Because what do you think is the biggest damage that buffets cost today? You wouldn't even think about it, but as per FDA regulations in the US and even the regulations in India, in the US it's even stricter, where they say that after 4 hours on a buffet, the food has to be destroyed. In India and in other countries, I think the restrictions are pretty close to that. So you're talking about destroying food that's lying in buffets, and do you realize that the amount of food out on a buffet is never eaten? 60% of it is eaten, 40% of it is consigned to the trash can. So perhaps you could look at You could look at having a la carte meals. What about room gifts? Conferences give out room gifts for speakers, for delegates, and you have things left in the rooms. But instead of putting these gifts out to individuals, you might look at actually gifting to the community so that you can help that community sustain itself. Hotel rooms and hoteliers, you all know the problem. I go to hotels and I find they say that if you don't want your bed linen changed, you should leave a note on the bed, and then I come back and I find that the bed linen has been changed anyway. What about soaps and amenities? What can you do about these things? Do you know the number of pieces of soap that's actually destroyed or thrown away every day? How can they be actually collected and recycled into making soap again, perhaps? I was in the US in a hotel once when, very interestingly, Marriott, and I'll say this because I thought it was, I haven't seen this anywhere else, and I've stayed in hotels in so many countries across the world. They actually offered me $5, and they said that when I checked in. They said that we'll give you a $5 discount on your room bill for every day that you stay here. For each day, we'll give you a $5 discount if you do not have your bed linen changed. Now, that was an incentive, and I thought that was pretty interesting. But these are all possible ways, and we can all think of more interesting ways in which we can make this work. So in large conferences and in events, you have stands. You build stands which are today wasted when you don't reuse it. So now we can think of recycling stands, how stands can be used again. I've got an associate who exhibits in fairs across the world, but he moves all his material from a dismantleable format from one fair to another. For the last 4 years, he's been using the same material, and without having damaged it, he's able to recycle. That's a great idea. Today, I notice everywhere you have recycling of these lanyards and badges. They can all be recycled and collected. And of course, technology has given us apps which can have agendas with which we can avoid printing paper, printing itineraries, printing programs. Apps have all the data, and today everybody's got a cell phone, and I think not one of you would be sitting here without a cell phone, and you can see all of that on your cell phone instead of actually having to look at paper. The objective here is to minimize those things that would damage the ecology. Plastic, for one. Yes, plastic usage. Have you thought of the toothbrush? A toothbrush is something we all use. We've got over 2 billion toothbrushes that are being thrown away each year in this world. 2 billion toothbrushes thrown away each year and going into a landfill. So we have a possibility of a bamboo toothbrush, which will be a great solution. You know, and a lot of people always say this. It's just me. I'm only one person. What difference does it make? My incremental damage to the ecology. But then 70 million people are saying the same thing. Okay, another aspect of sustainability is also participating in corporate social responsibility. Those of you who are doing incentives, those of you who are in business meetings and taking people to other countries, you will notice that one new growing facet of incentive travel is corporate social responsibility. There is so much that can be done towards participating with the communities that you're actually visiting. When you're in a land, you should actually look at how you can participate. I think over the last so many years, I mean, I've been doing incentives for 40 years now. I've been in this trade, and I noticed that over the years, I don't do a single program now where there isn't some aspect of corporate social responsibility built into the program. And whether it is working with a village, we have a foundation where we work with a village outside Gurgaon, where we live in Delhi. where we work with the women and with the school program. This is something that's consistent and useful that you can introduce into all your programs. That's also part of sustainability. The sustainability aspect of the ecology coupled very closely with the sustainability aspect of the business we're in, which is tourism. So is the business of travel sustainable? Is the business of travel something we can actually call sustainable? Let me bring you to what we're actually in this world doing together. We're all chasing the same customer with the same offerings. We're all complaining about technology. We're all saying that internet is killing us. We're all worrying and constantly bantering about the government not doing enough to help us. The latest, of course, is that GST and taxes, they're driving us down the drain, where they're driving our business off the roads. That competitors are outpricing us and our margins are falling. We're all complaining all the time about these issues. So is tourism sustainable? So some home truths, which I think would be a great takeaway. There's no getting away from the fact that death and taxes are the only reality. So you can't wish GST away. Change will happen. Technology will come. And change will happen. We've got to learn to change along with that change. And we've got to adopt technology. Because if you don't adopt technology, you perish. You've got to find ways in which you can make your business thrive. Did you all not realize it, that when you started out as an entrepreneur, that you were actually going to get into the challenge of building that business? So, well, as an entrepreneur, you've got to find yourselves ways in which you can make it work. Technology, yes, it helps as well. So just here's an eye-opener. This is about keeping this business sustainable. Here's an eye-opener. 3% of the people in the business are what we call the first movers. 11% are early adopters, which means the 3% of the people in this industry are the ones who come up with innovative ideas. 11%, they are early adopters, and they say that, hey, here's a great idea, let me also start doing this. But 86%, they are what we call the Me Too category. The Me Too category are people who are going to get into the business because they find that others have got into it. They're going to be, before they get in, they're going to worry about it, they're going to think about it, they're going to have anxiety about it, and eventually they'll get on the bandwagon. But when they do, they'll find that their business is not growing like the first movers, the first 14%, because that first 14% has actually taken away the icing on the cake. They've taken off the cream, so it's the 86% who are struggling. So what I'd like to bring this discussion to an end with is to bring up these 5 thoughts that I've had. They're important axioms, I call them, the 5 important axioms. You've got to think out of the box. You've got to think out of the box. You've got to come up with innovative ideas. You've got to come up with interesting ideas that keep your clients interested and keep your clients excited. You've got to get trust. Now, this is a big thing. Today, everyone's fighting on price. Everyone's fighting each other on giving a better margin, better price, competing with the internet. Rather than all these things, you've got to get trust of your customer. You can get the trust of your customer by educating him, by making him understand the value of what you're giving, and you can actually get his confidence so that he would come to you to do things for him in the industry. We've also got to realize that profit is not a dirty word. Profit is the result of earnings, and earnings is a just reward for what you are delivering in the service industry. So you've got to realize that because you're giving this service, you've got the right to earn this money. And that comes from high quality delivery and not quantity alone. Quantity does not make profit. It is quality that makes profit. And finally, as a last takeaway, is instead of always competing, also look at the possibility of collaborating. Collaboration is the future. Putting your heads together, thinking of ways in which we can make it more successful. So finally, as a closure, the travel business is sustainable. The travel business is sustainable. There is a future for it. And this business, meetings, conferences, incentive, events, it's here to stay, and it will be in demand. It is profitable. It is sustainable, provided we think of these things in a positive light. It is going to make it. It is going to be there, so it is going to make it is going to be workable for you, and it has got to be workable in a sustainable manner. So that is the last thought. Thank you very much. I don't know if I've been able to convey what I've been wanting to convey, but essentially, the reality of the future lies in the fact that there is no getting away from it. Sustainability is essential. We've got to save the earth, and while we're saving the earth, find a way in which we have a rightful place in that. Thank you very much.